Good. Mark? Hey, John, how's it going? All right.
Hey, good to meet you. What's
Billy
up,
here? Reverend Billy?
Congratulations.
Can we have your blessings? Reverend Billy? Paging Reverend Billy.
Reverend Billy.
Are you going to? I don't get in front of the camera here.
Sure.
Well, I know here.
If everybody who speaks could speak right into the microphone, I think we can all hear that, right? Yeah.
So it's Reverend Billy, and he has a special place in Malachy's heart because down at his church in the Lower East Side, he canonized him as the patron saint of atheists. And I don't know if he'll ever be forgiven for that. But now the Reverend Billy to kick off an atheist corner.
That was the third time we had sainted Malachy. And we were ready to do it again. He asked me at one point, why are you sainting me so often? And I said, well, it's your sins, basically. They keep coming back and overwhelming your holy status. And he, of course, he liked that answer. He would stand by his sins anytime, right? Anybody who's read his book, you know what I'm talking about. You know, we have a full feeling for his contention that death need not be fatal because, first of all, he's so alive right now with us. Am I right? Somebody give me a Malachy-luya here. One more time, Malachy-luya. One more time, Malachy-luya. One more time, Malachy-luya.
That's Malachy doing that.
That's what happens. He did show up. Well, we know him from his brother's book. We see him when he was 7 years old and hungry. And then all the way through to the Malachy watering hole, to Johnny Carson's sidekick, to just meeting him in the grocery store. I mean, just on and on. He wouldn't let up, would he? And now he's refused. He's refused this thing that we all are afraid of, because a little corner of our lives are possibly not as atheistic as we want it to be. We're all destined for that large, beautiful nothingness that the earth has ordered up for us. And he had himself on the cover of his book telling a joke from the coffin. Am I right? And then, of course, he's laughing at his own joke. And that's one of the reasons we laughed along with him, is because he was such a good laugher. Amen? Malachy-luya. I know that it's mourning him was made easier in one sense because he was such a lovely spirit, and you just feel good remembering him. And then mourning him is harder too, because it's difficult to say goodbye to somebody who really figured life out and who was really good at living. And nobody was as good at living as Malachy McCourt. Malachy, thank you. Malachy. It's a riddle Impossible to get the answer right. Impossible to untie that knot. But he untied the knot of the riddle of life and then retied the knot and then gave it to us and expected us to try to do it. I think he leaves us with the responsibility for our own personal, original sense of humor, our own original, the way that each of us has our own way of talking, our own way of thinking and of facing life and death. And he would just say, go with that. That's what he said to us at the Church of Stop Shopping every time we sainted him. He said, what's it for this time? And he would give it back to us, basically. We know that right now, he would have something to say to that motorist. He would say, that is death, calling on each of us, because, Billy, you've brought up the subject. We have right now something that was always on his mind, especially in the last decade of his life, and that is the health of this place that we live in, this place, the earth. And he always talked about it and organized his struggle against racism and sexism and classism, and he always organized it within his acceptance of the life that he was given by the earth, and at the same time, his chagrin, his dismay. And if he ever had hatred, it was for the people who poison the earth and make $1 billion doing that. He would right now have a way to deal with Donald Trump. And I think that he gives each and every one of us the challenge. If he can deal with death, we can deal with Trump. Hallelujah! Hallelujah! Malachy-lujah! Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Reverend Billy. If you want to see him, he's opening for Neil Young around the country. All right, the next person we're going to have up, he certainly doesn't work for on the Fifth Avenue Parade electing Grand Marshals, but Archley Prudent is the co-chair of the St. Pat's for All, and they were the ones that made Malachy and his family the Grand Marshals out in Queens at the St. Pat's for All Parade. And I want to welcome Archley up here. Yeah, and Danny Dromm. Yeah, both of them with the St. Pat's for All Parade.
Thank you so much. Oh, bloody hell, I can't see now. I would like Danny Dromm to say a few words before I do. Okay.
I didn't expect to say any words, but anyway, it's great to be here. Malachy and his three brothers were part of St. Pat's for All. St. Pat's for All was the alternative, inclusive St. Patrick's Day parade in Sunnyside, Queens, and we celebrated our 26th year last year. And Malachy, of course, was always there no matter what. Even when he wasn't Grand Marshal, he was there every single year. And it's just wonderful to be here today to celebrate this street co-naming and to say thank you to Gail Brewer for doing that. Let's give Gail a big round of applause. Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal is here also. Where's Linda? Right there, thank you. And I'll turn it back over to Archley.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What more can I add that has not already been said about the great and legendary Malachy McCourt? You and I are blessed to have known him for 17 years, and for the last 24 years, Malachy was present for every parade, every event for St. Pat's for All. That's a fact. St. Pat's event don't start until Malachy get there. And when he get there, he leads you to a song, and we all know what that is. Wild Mountain Time. Here you go, lassie, go. I cannot, sorry about that. It is in the spirit that the Board of Directors of St. Pat's for All unanimously agreed to honor and dedicate the 27th annual St. Pat's for All Parade celebration to the incredible and unforgettable Malachy McCourt. We invite all of you to join us on Sunday, March 1st in Sunnyside, Woodside, where we'll once again sing We'll hear you go, lassie, go. Siobhan, thank you so much for asking St. Pat to be part of today's celebration. And always remember, Malachy during the song has stopped and he tells you one thing: sing the song, children. And always remember to sing the song, children. Cheers to Malachy.
And we can never forget the person who founded the St. Pat's for All, Brendan Fay, who's here tonight too, this afternoon. Now, the legacy that Malachy is leaving is not only that sign up there, but I can't wait for someone to get into a cab and say, take me to Malachy McCourt Lane. That's when you've made it in New York City. So the other legacy Malachy's going to have, he founded the Irish American Writers and Artists. And we're now going to bring up the current president of it, Liza Engesser.
Hi, everybody. I'm so honored that Siobhan asked me to be here today. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to hold it really close to me. Malachy McCourt was many things to those of us gathered here. Friend, father, mentor, inspiration, and to Irish American writers and artists, he was our fearless leader. It is difficult to sum up the man Malachy was in words alone. Through his foundation of the Irish American Writers and Artists Salons, he provided generations of writers, artists, musicians, dancers, and more with a forum which to display their work publicly. Young and old, rich and poor, Irish and beyond, have all shared their work, made lasting connections, and made merry in the wake of the trailblazing force of nature that was Malachy McCourt. Many of us would not be here were it not for the impact he left on us. After hosting the Youth Salon last week, I realized that Malachy made arts accessible to everyone with these salons. He extended the opportunities that he was given to others through our organization. Iowa will continue to carry on his legacy of giving the new generations a chance to express themselves through their art by giving hope and encouragement to artists of all ages, backgrounds, and talents. Iowa also awarded 2 scholarships in Malachy's name last week. One to Richard Thomas Robbins, a theater major in the BFA program at SUNY Purchase. And another to Jasminder Garsha, a history student from Queens College, CUNY Irish Studies. On behalf of all of Iowa, I would like to congratulate the McCourts on this momentous occasion. Malachy will forever be a deeply influential figure, in Iowa's history, and his presence will continue to be felt at our salons for a very long time to come. We will forever hear him singing Wild Mountain Time at the end of our salons, as he always did, whether it be on Zoom, during a global pandemic, or in person telling us to sing the song, children. Thank you.
Thank you, Liza. Also, that we opened up with the horse and carriage coming down was Christina Hansen. I'd like to thank her for offering the opportunity, because she was there for Malachy at the St. Pat's for All to take him down Skillman Avenue. Now, Malachy was an atheist, but when I was with him on the radio, he would never shut up about religion. They just kept going on. But he did have a cathedral, and that cathedral is on 22nd Street, and it's called the Irish Repertory Theater. And today, we have the bishop of that cathedral, the one and only Ciran O'Reilly.
Bless you, John. A few years before Malachy died, he called me and said, Ciran, I have a favor to ask of you. You know, I consider Irish Repertory Theatre to be my spiritual home, and I would like to have my wake there. I said, Malachy, we would be honoured. Of course we will. Then Malachy says, but there's a catch. I want to be at it. I'd like to have the wake before I die. I want to hear what people are going to say about me. Well, the timing never quite worked out for the wake, mostly because there wasn't enough hours in the day or days in the week for Malachy to fulfill his cultural and humanitarian obligations, which we all know here were manifold. One of Malachy's childhood goals was to become an American gangster. I'm sure he must have felt somewhat disappointed at the bourgeois respectability of having died in his warm, comfortable bed. I'm sure he imagined something much more dramatic like Jimmy Cagney in The Public Enemy or Butch Cassidy in The Sundance Kid. But here we are today at the public hanging of Malachy McCourt. Surely that's some great comfort to Malachy. And I have a feeling that he actually is here like he wanted to be. He's sitting in his window upstairs and listening to our words. And this is what he's saying. Blessings on your craniums, one day at a time.
Thank you. And our next guest, someone who was an actress at the Irish Repertory Theatre, but probably better known for Orange is the New Black or Star Trek, Kate Mulgrew, who we've had on the radio many times, was a good friend of Malachy starting out in the soap operas, and what a good friend he was to her. So we're going to ask Kate Mulgrew to come up and say a few words.
Thank you very much. I knew Malachy for 50 years. He was there when I had my first job on a soap opera called Ryan's Hope. And it may surprise you to know he played the bartender. Why am I speaking with an Irish accent? Here's another thing I know. He would have adored this. Of all the honors this great city can bestow on its citizens, to name a street after you is just about the greatest one of all. And for those who don't know who he was, and they're very few, but there will be strangers, there will be foreigners crossing from there to there, and they'll look up and they'll look, 93 Malachy McCourt Lane, and they'll carry on, and as they carry on, they'll carry on with him. So he'll go with them wherever they go. And that's the legacy of this great man. Thank you.
And keeping with the theater theme for Malachy, when Malachy couldn't get to the cathedral on 22nd Street, he would go out to Long Island City to the cathedral of the New York Irish Center. And with us we have the executive director, George Heslin, from the center. But Malachy knew George Heslin before he was George Heslin through his uncles in Limerick. So I want to invite George up.
Whoa! Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And just say thank you to our elected officials who organised today, and also thank you to the McCourt family, Siobhan, Connor, and Dan as well. Thank you. It's such an honour to be here. My name is George. As John said, I run the New York Irish Centre in Long Island City, and formerly before that I ran Origin Theatre Company, the first Irish festival. But how I got to meet Malachy, I'm actually from Limerick, and my uncle Matty was Malachy's best friend when they were young. And in the school, in the hard copy version of Angela's Ashes, in the flyleaf, there is a photograph of a class, and my uncle is seated right down in the middle. So, but my uncle sadly passed away. He drowned when he was 17, and he was Malachy's best friend. So when we grew up in Limerick, we always heard the story of the Heslin connection with the McCourts, etc., etc. So when I got to America, I met Malachy probably 30 years ago at Symphony Space, doing Isaiah Schaefer's wonderful Bloomsday on Broadway. And thank you, Isaiah. And I went up and I introduced myself, and you know, Heslin is quite an unusual name. So I introduced myself and I said, Malachy, my name is George Heslin from Limerick. And the first thing he said, oh, are you anything to Matty? And I said, he's my uncle. And he literally broke down and cried, and he brought me over to meet Frank, and that began my relationship with the McCourt and the McCourt family here. And just to say that Malachy, as I built these artistic organisations and friends and community, Malachy, as we all know, is an extraordinary man that he said yes to everybody. He turned up to every event, even in his last years of his life. Thanks to his great carers and carers team, he supported everyone here. And just to say that he will be greatly missed, and there'll be no one like Malachy McCourt in this town. And just to say also, Malachy was a peacemaker, a friend to us all, and if he was here today, he would ask us to remember the people of Palestine and the people of Ukraine. Thank you all for being here.
As we're talking about Malachy's legacy with the Irish American writers and artists, one of the other people that helped found it was T.J. English, the chronicle of the Westies and all the other gangsters here in New York City. And his last book, The Last Kilo, about the Cubans in Newark, New Jersey. And I want to invite T.J. English up.
very happy that nobody yet has said, "May he rest in peace," because Malachy detested that phrase. I knew Malachy, I guess, most of my adult life. I was a young man when I met him. When I met Malachy, I was a young man. I think I've known him. I'd known him since I was in my 20s. And there are many things about Malachy that we're here to celebrate today. Malachy reminds me of that Walt Whitman poem, "I Contain Multitudes." That was Malachy. So many things to admire about him. But there was one thing I admired about him from the very beginning and right up until the end. And that was the way in which he would call out hypocrisy and pomposity in our very own Irish American community. And it took such courage to do that, especially at a time when in many cases he was the only person doing that. And so many times over the years I would be at an event where Malachy was speaking, and I would turn to somebody and say, "We're going to be devastated when he's gone." I actually feared the day that Malachy McCourt would be gone, because I feared what it meant for us, that we would lose that voice. And as I see everybody here today, I realize we're not losing that voice. We're having bestowed upon us the opportunity to carry on that legacy of courage, to speak truth to power, to call out hypocrisy and pomposity in our own community when we see it. And that's what I celebrate most about Malachy McCourt. Thank you.
Now, you're wondering how I'm going to tie Jeffrey Epstein into this. As you know, Trump is not releasing the files on him. But there is an author here today that has got Trump to release the files on Amelia Earhart. And Laurie Gwen Shapiro, whose book, The Aviator and the Showman, is here today, and she was a great friend of Malachy's. She did the documentaries, The McCourts of Limerick and McCourts of New York, and she became a part-time gold smuggler with Malachy to the country of India. And I want to wish Laurie to come up.
Hi, Diana. I want to thank the family. I have to say there aren't too many Shapiros on this bill, but I consider the McCourts part of my family, to the effect that I first entered the McCourts arena, so to speak, when I went to Stuyvesant High School, and my high school English class was Frank. He became my mentor. So I met Malachy when I was about 14 years old at a couple of Blaggards, which was being performed for a special performance at Stuyvesant. But I got to go to Ireland with all the brothers, which was pretty amazing. I went down the lanes of Limerick, and then later on, that was an HBO documentary. I was a producer with Connor, who directed it, Malachy's son. And then I got to go to India, because Malachy, as many of you may or may not know, was a gold smuggler in India. So that was part 2. And we had learned in Ireland that there was an old man living somewhere in Mumbai or Bombay that was named Callahan of India. And I'll always remember him saying, "We're going to find him, we're going to find him." And we go up to people randomly in Bombay or Mumbai and say, "Do you know where Callahan of India is? Callahan of India." And then one day we're at the hotel, and an old man comes and says, "I am Callahan of India." And this story is a sensational story that I made a pact, because I'm a storyteller, as was Malachy, and he said, "Laurie, you're not allowed to tell this story until I die." So I'm going to probably write it up for who he was. I'll leave that as the lead. The other thing I want to say is that my mother became friends with the McCourts. She moved to Florida, and she felt like it was a literary desert, and she started to import authors down to Florida. So she started with Frank, who was a big hit, and then she wanted Malachy, and she was 4'10", and she had a great sense of humor. And when she was picking him up, normally there's a driver at the airport, she took the card that said Malachy McCourt and put it in front of her face. And so he went to look for the driver. All he could see was a very short person with a sign, and he was like, pardon me, are you the driver? And she flipped it down, and he just started laughing, and they started a friendship. And he always said to me, and I will tell you where he said it, he led the Jewish funeral service for my mother and turned it into an Irish wake. I've never laughed. I was laughing at my own mother's funeral. We're about food. We're not about the laughter and the tears. And we were all laughing. It was very inspiring. But he told this story, and he said that he neither my mother nor Malachy were at all religious to my knowledge, but he hoped that he was wrong. And that when he got to heaven, there was going to be a short person with a sign that said Malachy McCourt, and that if he would flip it down, and my mother and him would give each other a hug. So thank you so much. I actually got a little teary as we were doing the procession, and I'm a jaded New Yorker, and I just miss him so very much. Shana Tova.
There's certain people that go to college to study the Torah, the Bible, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Our next guest had to go up into that building and decipher the writings of Malachy McCourt for a book called Death Need Not Be Fatal. It took him many years of studying the hieroglyphics of a Malachy McCourt as he was writing on paper. But Brian McDonald was able to decipher it and turn it into a best-selling book. Brian.
I'm right here. Hey. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. Boy, you can always draw a crowd, Malachy can. You know, we did events for this book. Here it is. I brought props. We did events for this book. And at every event, there was like this many people. We did one event in Greenwood Cemetery, in the middle of the cemetery. And there must have been 300 people there. And I think some of them were dead when they showed up. Yeah, I had a tough job. I had to listen to Malachy McCourt tell stories. I'd come over here, I'd go up to the manse, Diana and Malachy's manse. I'd sit in that great room of his. And if you've seen it, seen pictures of it, it has all his books surrounding him, and the pictures of his brothers and family, and the Malachyabilia, I like to call it. There was citations and promotions and electioneering campaign memorabilia, and the deceased stamp. Remember the deceased stamp? Malachy used to imprint it on electric bills and send it back to Con Ed with no check in it. And that actually started his career in show business, because he told that story in Fire Island. Am I right, Diana? He told that story in Fire Island to a guy that was the booker on the Jack Parr show with the Tonight Show. And he says, I want you on the show. And that started Malachy's show business. So anyhow, I had to listen to Malachy tell stories. And singularly, he was the best storyteller I've ever known. And anybody that heard him tell a story knows that. And so I won't try to emulate it, because I'll fall woefully short if I do. But I'll give you an example. So I wrote a book a couple of years ago when it came out. And Malachy invited me out to lunch at the Greek place, his favorite Greek place up here on Broadway. Excuse me, I gotta catch my breath. And he invited Colin McCann and Dan Barry, whom I didn't know, but who are two of my favorite writers, right? So he was gonna buy me lunch, which was a big thing too, Malachy buying lunch. So, the day before the Queen of England died, and just as a conversation thing, I threw out, Malachy, did you ever meet the Queen? And he got this look on his face, you know? And when he had that look on his face, you knew something was coming, you know? His eyes started to twinkle. And he said two words, I did. And what followed was one of the most amazing stories. And here I'm sitting with Colin McCann and Dan Barry, and they're wrapped absolutely on the edge of their seat. listening to this man tell this tale. And I won't tell you, like I said, I won't tell the tale, but I'll tell you how it ended. Prince Philip went up to him and said, McCourt, next time you're in London, look me up. I'm in Buckingham Palace. That's the truth. So, Siobhan, Diana, the McCourt family, New York City, what is it, number 7, whatever it is, Gail Brewer, thank you for that sign. But if you're like me, you don't need a sign of Malachy McCourt, because he's lived in an intersection in my mind since I've known him. Which is a good thing. Because when Malachy's in your head, there's less worry and more laughter. For sure. So I brought this book as a prop, but it's also and I hope somebody will. There's a couple of quid out there. You look like a very well-heeled crowd. I'm going to auction it off. It's the last book I have that has himself's signature in it. So if you want it, and the proceeds will go to the Take Diana McCourt Out to Lunch Fund. So dig deep. Thank you.
Well, we have to remember, not only will there be a corner for Malachy McCourt, but not far away from here, we have his brother with the Frank McCourt High School. And some of the people responsible for that are the politicians that live in this area. How lucky they are to have the two McCourts in their area. And one of those is Assembly Person Linda Rosenthal, and she's going to come up and say a few words.
Thank you so much. I'm Linda Rosenthal. I represent Upper West Side, parts of Hell's Kitchen in the Assembly. And I'm just so honored and moved to be here and to be a witness and to just say a few words. So I met Malachy McCourt when I was a wee girl in my bed listening to him on WMCA on Sunday nights. I don't know what possessed me, but one Sunday night when I probably shouldn't have been awake anymore, I called him and I got on the air. I do not remember what I said, but I know he entertained like a little kid, treated me seriously, and I cherish that long ago memory forever. And I watched him on Ryan's Hope along with you, and when I was elected, Diana and he came to my office on 72nd Street to speak to me about people with developmental disabilities. And it was so moving. And so every year when I fight for more funding for people with developmental disabilities and for proper homes and care for them, in my heart, I dedicate it to Malachy. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have his name, his lane, right here in my neighborhood. Thank you so much.